Hello, my name is Emma, and today is National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. I have been so pumped for this week for months. I got my NEDA shirt on and I am ready to go. If you did not know, I have been battling an eating disorder for the past decade of my life, since I was 11 years old, and I've been in recovery for it for about 5 or 6 years now. Obviously, the National Eating Disorders Association has been a huge part of my life. I actually went to the last NEDA walk in October in New York City, and it was the greatest experience, and I actually got to meet all of NEDA's staff at a breakfast following the fundraiser, and it was just like the most amazing experience. In honor of this week, I have left some information below about NEDA, the National Eating Disorders Association, as well as other pages related to eating disorders if you'd like to increase your knowledge. So for today's video, as I am an avid reader, I wanted to share some of my favorite eating disorder books with you guys and recommend them to you. I have 4 YA fiction novels as well as 3 nonfiction kind of self-help books on this list that I would like to recommend to you guys. If you are somebody who is dealing with an eating disorder yourself, or you're somebody in your life has been dealing with this, or even if you just like to increase your knowledge and maybe hear more about stories of people who have suffered from this, I really hope that you get at least one good book recommendation out of this video. But of course, as we are talking about a sensitive topic, I do just want to place a trigger warning for all of these books because they do obviously deal with eating disorders. These books approach these topics at a variety of different levels. There are some on here that might be very triggering for you. There are some that might not be triggering at all. So I ask, if you're interested in any of these books and would like to read them for yourself, I would just recommend being wary, trying to evaluate yourself, and reaching out to any help service if you feel triggered by the nature of the content. So without further ado, here are some of my eating disorder book recommendations. The first one on this list is Winter Girls by Lori Halse Anderson. This book follows a girl named Leah who suffers from anorexia, and recently her friend Cassie, who is also dealing with another eating disorder, bulimia, has just recently passed away. So in addition to Leah's illness, she's also dealing with the grief of one of her past closest friends. This one has been recommended to me like a million times over, and I'm so happy I finally read it because I just absolutely loved this book with all of my heart. It really captured what it's like to be in the mind of somebody who deals with anorexia, as that's something I've dealt with myself. It really delved into the bitterness and anger and cold-heartedness that can come from experiencing this, but it also dealt with the need for help. It really delves into how destructive this illness can be, and I am so appreciative that it exists because I related to it on such a personal level. Like I said, this book is really explicit when it comes to describing the thoughts somebody with an eating disorder might feel, so I would put a very high trigger warning on this one, but nonetheless, I think it is such an important book, and if you are looking to understand what it's really like to be in the head of somebody who is dealing with this, I would recommend it. I'd put it at like the top of my recommendations list. Next book I have here is very similar to Winter Girls, and because I know Winter Girls is a very popular book about eating disorders, many people have read it. I think if you liked Winter Girls, you would definitely like Paperweight by Meg Haston. This is a book about a girl named Stevie who is suffering from bulimia, and her parents have sent her off to this like 60-day treatment center miles and miles away from home. Like many of us who enter eating disorder treatment, she does not want to be there. She doesn't think she's sick. She just wants to keep going until she disappears. This experience is going to be hard enough on Stevie, but she is actually approaching the 1-year anniversary of the day her brother died, which she blames herself for, and she plans on committing suicide before the end of her treatment. So a very, very heavy book, but nonetheless, again, I feel it is just so authentic and raw. This was the first fictitious novel about an eating disorder that I've ever read, and I've never felt so identified in my life as I did at that moment. There were just so many points in this book where I was like, I can't believe other people felt these things, thought these things, did these things. It really made me feel like I wasn't alone during that time when I was suffering so badly. Again, the language is very descriptive, and I would put it at the same kind of high trigger warning as Winter Girls, but I feel like sometimes the rawness that can come from a story that is so explicit and graphic can really complement it in a positive way. And what I love about both of these stories is things don't end in a pretty wrapped bow, because when you're dealing with an eating disorder, recovery is just the first step to getting better. It's not like you enter treatment and everything is okay. It's something that still torments you for years to come, and you have to constantly work at it. And I feel like these books just end at a perfect point to promote people to go into recovery, and I just really love that about these two books. I think they're really similar, which is why I like to group them together, but if you liked one, you will love the other. The next one on here I am super excited to talk about because it's not one of the more mainstream eating disorder books, but that is Not Otherwise Specified by Hannah Moskowitz. First few things I loved about this book. Number one, it follows a black teen, which is like totally unheard of in eating disorder media. For some reason, everyone always thinks it's skinny white girls, but it's not. Eating disorders affect all ethnicities, all genders, all sexualities, which leads into my second point, that this is also about a bisexual bisexual teen, so we get some LGBTQIA plus representation, which is equally as important. So if you're looking for an eating disorder rec that is hella diverse, I would recommend Not Otherwise Specified. This book follows a teen named Etta who is currently recovering from what is known as otherwise specified feeding or eating disorder, or previously known as eating disorder not otherwise specified. Etta is an ex-ballerina who's still currently dancing, and she's going through the motions of her group therapy sessions. Essentially, Etta feels like she doesn't fit in anywhere. Her friend group is not very accepting of her sexuality as it differs from theirs. She doesn't feel like she's sick enough, and she feels like she's not reaching her dancing potential because ballet is too triggering for her. So in Etta's eating disorder group therapy session, she meets this 14-year-old girl named Bianca who is obviously very sick, and Etta and Bianca form this unlikely friendship through their situations. I think my absolute favorite thing about this book is it's a book I have been searching for years now. For the longest time, I have been saying, I want a book about somebody who is dealing with an eating disorder, who has gone into recovery, who has started the treatment process, and while they're on their way to getting better and developing a more healthy relationship with food, they are still dealing with their eating disorder. We have so many books about individuals with eating disorders who are either not in treatment yet, or they are really resentful of entering treatment, and it always seems to stop right after they enter treatment for the first time. As somebody who has been in treatment for 5 years and is still recovering, I had not found my story until this one. It was so refreshing to see my present mindset reflected into a book instead of my 14-year-old mindset, and I just can't tell you what an amazing feeling it was to feel just that identified, like I was really reading my present feelings. It was just so emotional for me. Like, I truly feel like I'm changed. I view my recovery differently because of Etta's story. As trigger warnings go, I don't think Not Otherwise Specified is as triggering as books like Paperweight or Winter Girls. It might be different for you, and I want to enforce that my experiences reading these books are not going to be the same as yours, but I feel like this book truly did a great job of describing what it's like to suffer from an eating disorder in recovery specifically, without making you want to revert to those old feelings or putting them back in your head. And that's like super important to me when it comes to eating disorder literature. This book was just so great. I would highly recommend it. I think it's a story that everyone can benefit from reading because there's so much diversity in it, and Etta's story is just truly one that is going to motivate and inspire you, and I just couldn't be happier with this book. And so the final YA fiction book on this list actually comes out this week during NEDA week. It comes out on February 28th, and that is Sad Perfect by Stephanie Elliott. I will be posting a review of this on the release date, so if you wait around a couple days, you'll hear all of my thoughts on this book. The real reason why I want to recommend this on this list is because it deals with an individual who is suffering from ARFID, or known as Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. If you aren't very familiar with the different denominations of eating disorders, you might not even know that exists, which is why I am so happy this book is going to be on shelves. ARFID's kind of different from a lot of eating disorders you might have heard about previously, like anorexia, bulimia, or OSFED. It's primarily focused around individuals who feel they are incapable of eating certain foods. Like, the thought of different foods, whether it's based on texture, color, taste, anything of that sort, gives them so much anxiety that they cannot eat certain foods. It's extremely intrusive. It's as serious as any other eating disorder, but most people don't know about it because it's a fairly new diagnosis. So this book follows 16-year-old Pia, who has recently been diagnosed with ARFID, and she is just so ecstatic to finally know what she has felt has been wrong with her for her entire life. She's excited to enter recovery, which is like the greatest thing you could possibly put in an eating disorder book. She really wants to get better, and that's amazing. Now, Pia is also on depression and anxiety medication from a previous hospitalization, but she recently meets this boy named Ben. And Ben and Pia grow madly in love very quickly, like a lot of teenagers do. And as a result of that, Pia stops taking her medication because she feels so happy and she feels so much better around Ben that she feels she doesn't need them anymore. Which is a really bad thing, and so this book takes us through the course of the repercussions of Pia's actions of placing somebody else above her own mental health, which is the entire point of the novel, and I love that. I really loved this book. I was able to see so much of myself and Pia in our similar food relationships, even though I don't suffer from ARFID. What's really amazing about it to me is this opened my eyes to a lot of the unhealthy eating habits I still carry with me, and after reading this book, I was able to go to my therapist, and we talked about a lot of those, and as a result of reading this book, I was able to eat a certain food I hadn't allowed myself to eat for my entire life and 21 years of existence. And that is just like the most amazing thing for me, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it because it makes me so proud to know that this is something I was able to do, and it really was because of this book. As triggers go for this book, I personally did not find this book very triggering, but again, I don't have ARFID, so I can't tell you how it would affect you personally. The way Pia describes certain foods are the type of authenticity and rawness I like to see in books about eating disorders, but they might provide to be triggering for other individuals, because I do know there was one person that was very, very triggered by this novel. And that goes for all of these. Again, I cannot tell you how you're going to interpret this book, which is why I ask you to proceed with caution. I do just want to place a trigger warning for self-harm on this book though, because it's not explicitly stated in the synopsis and it's something I feel you guys should know. But overall, I'm just so happy Sad Perfect exists. I've had people over the years asking me for recommendations about ARFID, and for so long I had to tell them, I don't have any books for you, I'm very sorry. I finally have one, and I am so excited to recommend it to those 3 individuals who have reached out to me, and to any of you who are interested in reading this novel. But I loved Sad Perfect. It's a story that is going to be very close to my heart for a very long time, and I'm happy I read it. So these conclude my 4 YA mental health fiction works, and as for everything in this video, all of the Goodreads links for these books will be in the description of this video if you'd like to find out more about them. But now I have 3 nonfiction works I do want to share with you guys. I think if you truly want to educate yourself on an issue like eating disorders, it's important that while we consume fiction that would make us very happy and still be very enlightening, we should also read some nonfiction. So the first 2 nonfiction books I have are actually from the same author, and that is Life Without Ed and Goodbye Ed, Hello Me, both by Jenny Schaefer. These are essentially memoir / self-help books about a woman who has been dealing with an eating disorder for like 20 to 30 years now. These books are basically filled with different anecdotes of Jenny's life about different significant moments in her eating disorder and recovery treatment. They also include a lot of helpful exercises and coping strategies that can help you through this time of recovering from your eating disorder or breaking off your relationship with Ed. I have to say, Life Without Ed specifically was such a significant book in my personal recovery. When I was an inpatient for 3 days, all I did was read Life Without Ed over and over and over again. It was truly an anchor for me. There were so many things I took away from this book that I still carry with me today, like giving a name to your eating disorder, and I call mine Anna. Because of Jenny Schaefer, I wrote my Declaration of Independence from Anna, and I had a bunch of people in my support circle sign it, and I really wish I still had it. But these books were such stable stepping stones to my recovery from me, and I think that they are super important for anyone to read who is looking to educate themselves more, who is looking for their own personal help, or looking to help somebody in their life that may be dealing with this. Really, really fantastic reads. I would totally recommend these for the rest of my life because I think they are such important books for you to have to your collection of eating disorder books. And the final book on my list is actually one I just recently finished this month in preparation for this video, and that is Crave, Why You Binge Eat and How to Stop by Cynthia M. Bullock. So as eating disorder literature goes, specifically with fiction, you may have noticed a big eating disorder that was missing from there is binge eating disorder. So I knew I wanted to have a book in this recommendations video, and I wanted to read it for myself about binge eating disorder, and I felt a nonfiction book would be of great help to me. Although I've suffered from anorexia for half of my life, I'm no stranger to binge eating, and I really do understand how destructive that behavior can be. So I really felt it would be important for me not only to read this book to get something out of it, but also to recommend it to you guys who may not see as much representation for a disorder you or somebody you know might be suffering from. I personally got so much out of Crave. Like, the number one thing I took away from this book was information, because it was so educational. It's so well written to the point where you're learning so much and not even feel like it's dragged down. Like, I personally don't read a lot of nonfiction. I'm very scared that it's not going to hold my interest, but this one definitely did. I learned a lot about binge eating disorder and binge eating in general, and there were also a lot of great tips and kind of self-reflective moments in this book that I really took away from it. There's a lot of sections on this book that help you personally identify what type of binge eater you are, what are your triggers, what situations cause you to binge eat the most, and what is going to help you the most to stop. This book was just such an introspective read for me. It really made me look at myself and my own personal relationship with food, and I honestly took so much out of it that I feel much more confident going into my day now, specifically because of everything I took away from this book. The one thing I do want to note about it is there is kind of a heavy focus of binge eating disorder and obesity. Not anyone who binge eats or suffers from binge eating disorder is going to be overweight or needs to lose weight, and there are certain passages that are very heavily focused on maintaining a healthy weight, on losing weight and keeping that weight off, and the dangers of obesity. While those are all really important things, if you're somebody like me who has an issue with losing weight, you might want to skip those passages because I definitely did, but otherwise this book was absolutely fantastic. I took a lot out of it, and it was actually recommended to me by a lot of you guys when I said I was looking for binge eating disorder books, and so I'm really, really thankful I read it. So these are just a few of my eating disorder book recommendations. There are so many other books out there that I cannot wait to read. I loved each and every one of these. I would love to know your thoughts on if you've read any of them, if you're planning on reading any of them after this recommendations video, or if you have any eating disorder books that you'd like to recommend to me, because I would love some more books about something that I can really relate to that I would love to talk about on my channel. But that is it for my video on eating disorder book recommendations. I am really excited for NEDA week this year. I'm super excited to keep fighting stigma and spreading awareness for eating disorders as if I don't every other day, but specifically because it is a week dedicated to bringing awareness to talking about these issues and to maybe helping others that might be in that situation. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!